It's a shadow tree now. We're going to be human cancer for a while. But yeah, it's not what it used to be. I go away now and then, so it's thanks for fun.
Good afternoon all. Thank you for gathering today. I wish to make an announcement about Victoria Police, and I will start off by saying that Victoria Police have exceptional people who do a wonderful job under challenging circumstances. But I'll also say that we have two significant issues. The first one is we have a major crime problem here in Victoria. We are way overrepresented. There are far too many victims of crime. No one should live in fear of people breaking into their homes overnight, stealing cars, carjackings, violence in the street, violence at retail outlets, knife crime. Victoria and Victoria people should feel safe, whether they go about their business, whether they're at home, wherever they may be. And we need to address that. The second problem we have is the lack of trust and confidence in the Victoria Police. We need to lift that. So in terms of those two very significant issues, we need to police differently. We need a reset. We need to reorganise ourselves. And today, I announce to our people here at Victoria Police what the proposed change looks like. First thing is a slimmed down police executive and a slimming of the support to the police executive, which means we can invest more resource in the front line. And I want to talk to that a little bit later on. The second thing is an increase in our focus on prevention, community, partnerships, early intervention, all critical things in turning around the crime problem that we have. We've set a target of a 5% reduction. That means we've got to stem that tide, that increase we've seen over the last few years, and start preventing crime before it happens. We also need to support our staff and build a much bigger presence on the streets. A number of things we'll do will enable that. The first thing is establishing a 24/7 state command and coordination centre based here at Victoria, where the people running that will have the executive's authority to deploy 24/7 into crime issues as they arrive. They have the executive's permission to understand crime as it happens and deploy to prevent it as it occurs. Second thing we'll do, in order to put more police on the streets, is develop a backroom support area. We have overburdened our frontline staff. We've put a lot of resource into our specialist teams, and they deserve it. But we have under-resourced into our front line. One thing, through the ability to deploy resource and reorganise ourselves, is to build a significant back room where investigations can be done on behalf of our frontline staff so they don't have to carry inquiry files, where others, very well trained and equipped, can actually do their file briefings, do disclosure, and take that workload off the front line, enabling them to be far more present and far more visible on the streets of Victoria. The third thing is around our public counters. I've been here just over 3 months, and I've made a number of observations around the way we police. I was quite surprised to see at every station, for every shift, that we use uniformed police officers to man our public counters and take calls for service. Those things are really important, but they don't need to be done by highly trained frontline police officers. We will look at bringing another resource to do that role for them, and then enabling those officers to get out on the street to do the job they joined to do. Again, prevent crime and respond to calls for service on the streets, where the public want to see them. Short case study has shown us that every day 4,000 personnel hours are dedicated to that backroom public counter taking calls for service. In 1 year, when we do this, we will free up 1.4 million personnel hours of frontline officers' time that we will redeploy to the front line. So again, we'll meet these issues head on, and it's about us reorganising ourselves to be better, to ensure our officers are in the right place at the right time with the right equipment, the right technology to do the right things by their public. Thank you. That's just some opening statements from me. Very happy to take questions.
Will you be increasing police numbers at all with this, or will it be more of a rearrangement of current resources?
It's very much a rearrangement. We have 22,000 staff. As you know, we are more than 1,000 under strength. We have a piece of work underway to increase our recruitment, but also to focus on retention and return to work. We have 700 officers who are on work cover. Really want them back. Understand why they're on work cover, absolutely. Part of that's because we've overburdened them with bureaucracy, duplicate systems. We've made their job tough. That's why we want to free up those roles and attract those people back to work. And also use some of the experience that is leaving police to help us staff that back room and do those jobs that they can do so that frontline officers don't have to and can get out and do the things that will keep Victoria safe.
You said that taking people off those, taking uniformed officers off the counters, the front counters, who will they be replaced with? Will they be officers or?
There's a number of choices that we have in front of us. You don't need to be a fully trained officer to do that job. We have very capable people available to do that. We certainly do not contemplate stopping that service. We just believe it can be better delivered by others.
Who will they be? What kind of staff will they be?
Well, there's a number of choices that we have in front of us. They could be public servants, they could be PCOs. We'll look into that but that's definitely the way ahead.
You said that currently police are spending about 4,000 hours a day manning the receptions. Can you sort of elaborate a little bit more into how this is affecting frontline policing?
So if we take those 4,000 hours that they spend off the streets, behind a public counter or behind a telephone, and redeploy that into proactive policing, prevention activities, and responding to calls for service, and being more visible on the streets. So if you take it, for example, if there's an attack at a shopping centre, we could deter that by being there in the first place. We would much prefer to be there in that shopping centre than stuck behind a public counter answering a telephone or taking a report that could equally be done by other officers or other staff within Victoria Police.
Can you walk us through how the coordination centre is different to the current way that the different departments in VicPol communicate with one another?
Absolutely. So at the moment, we have what's called a VP MAC, which is staffed. But at the moment, it's very much to understand what's going on. What we have to do, set up the capability and the operating rules to give a senior officer who will run that place 24/7, who will understand the priorities that we, the executive, see, and that is reducing crime and harm, and deploy our resource 24/7 so that we can get in front of that. So coordinate the entire resource, and they will have our authority to do so.
Realistically, how long will it actually take to replace the watch house workers and the people doing paperwork with other administrative officers?
This is a long build, but some of it we're going to set up straight away. So we're going to establish pilots with what we do in terms of redeployed staff, and then see what we can do in terms of bringing other staff back into the organisation. But you're right, it does take a while to build. It could take 12 months. My mission is to complete this work, or at least get it semi-established within 12 months.
And I understand that this is just phase one. There's a phase two coming up that will see more tangible results. Can you tell us about that?
So phase two is in terms of how we reorganise ourselves. So phase one is very much the top end, and you have to do that first, and then we'll reorganise the entire organisation under that. So of course this is a proposal. Staff have got time to feed back. It's really important that they saw it for the first time today. They get time to feed back, especially the ones who feel that they might be impacted by that. They might have a different view about how this works. Really keen to hear what our people think of it, and we will take into consideration that feedback, and then perhaps within the next 3 months we'll land on exactly what this looks like at the top end.
Well, if you're trimming down from the top end, how are those members feeling? Do you know yet?
Most people, and I've taken the very senior staff through that journey personally one-on-one, and they really get the rationale. They really understand the why we're doing this. So that we're a little bit leaner, but it's all about reinvesting in the front line where the difference will be made. We have to prevent crime in our communities, and we have to have our police out there doing that, and we have to reorganise ourselves differently in order to do that.
What's the police out there and being on the front line? What happens when the same police officers are arresting the same kids over and over again, where we've got children turning to police officers saying, "I'll be out tomorrow morning," where they're bragging about being bailed? Having frontline officers out in force and in numbers is great, but how does the community have reassurance that these kids are going to be locked up or put before the courts correctly?
Yeah, there's two issues in that for us. The one is that, there really must be a consequence to that behaviour, and they've got to understand what that consequence looks like, and it's got to be realised. That's one thing. So you've got to know what it looks like, understand that there's a consequence, and have that consequence realised. But the other thing, and that's why we're having a focus on prevention, early intervention, community and partnerships, is we've got to get in front of this. Those young people, if there's an opportunity for us to intervene earlier in their lives, in partnership with others, we've got to do that. We want to stop these young people offending before they get to that point. You've all seen it lately. They're committing some really serious crimes, and some of them mean a life imprisonment. How do we intervene in their lives, in their communities way earlier? So we've got to do both. There's got to be an early intervention end and there's got to be a consequence end. And we've got to do both of those things at the same time. That's why we've reorganised ourselves. And you will see in the proposal that there is a proposal for a Deputy Commissioner, Prevention, Community and Partnerships. That's a real change for us, but it highlights our intent of also getting in front of this.
Does there need to be an element of tough love? It seems that a lot of the youths or witnesses that have heard comments from youths on the street, they don't seem to have a fear for authority or for enforcement or the laws. Is there any way that Victoria Police would look at working with the government for sentencing reforms or something a bit harsher to potentially scare the youths from doing this in the first place?
Yeah, that's that piece around consequence that I think is really important. It's a deterrence piece. So again, understanding what the likely consequence is and having quite a bit of reliability on the fact that that's actually what's going to occur. And, you know, I can't endorse any more that number one principle around the Sentencing and Bail Act is first consideration is community safety. That's absolutely appropriate. Unfortunately, if these young people are going to commit serious crimes and commit them often, community safety comes first.
Do you think police executives are losing their jobs?
So we will be slimming down from, so there'll be a commissioner as there was before, my position. There was 6 deputy positions, there will be 4 in the proposal. Again, I've got to receive feedback on that, but that's the initial proposal.
What kind of consultations have there been with, how did you come up with this plan? Have there been consultations with staff? Or?
Yeah, we've had a huge team working on this for months. What we need to do is reflect our operating model. So we designed a new operating model in the last few months, which then informed what the structure should look like, how we need to police differently. And of course, structure is just one part of that. So we've presented to our people a proposal on what that structure could look like. It's what we think is the right way. But of course, you go through a process where we need to hear from our people and stakeholders on their views.
Do you want mandatory sentencing for youth offenders?
I will stay with what I've said before around there's got to be consequence. It's important for deterrence to know what that looks like. And there should be consistency, which I think is where you're going with that. So some consistency around that. So people have some certainty. If they know they do this, this is what's going to happen to me. Not, oh, I might be able to walk away. No. If you're going to commit a serious crime, commit serious harm against other people, you need to know what's going to happen to you.
Once this shuffle restructure happens, how much time do you expect there to be any correlation between seeing that crime reduction with more boots on the ground?
I expect to see some difference happen shortly after, therefore, but it is quite a long run. So we need to embed this. We need to police differently, reorganise ourselves differently. But I am quite keen to do things, or some things, quicker than others, especially the pilots around building the back room and supporting our frontline staff. It's been overwhelmingly obvious to me that we have overburdened them and we need to free them up. They want to be out there on the streets, being visible, being able to interact, preventing crime and responding to calls for service. That's what they joined to do.
Victorians are obviously sick of crime. Why should they trust that this will work and this will make them feel safer?
Part of the answer to that question is I have been here before. I have done this before. It did make a difference. I am reflecting many of my own learnings from one of my previous roles. I'm committed to keeping Victoria safe, but I'm also committed to the fact that having spent 3 months here, having a look under the hood, understanding how we police and what opportunities are in front of us to drive the change in the way we do things. And it's all about making a difference.
When you hear some of the comments from youths who say that they'll be out on bail in a couple of hours and they'll do what they're doing continuously and terrorising people on the streets, how do you react to that as someone, as you say, who has the experience? Does it shock you, or have you been there, done that sort of thing?
No, it really surprises me. We are seeing an uptake in that attitude. I do believe it's got worse over the years, especially over perhaps the last decade. The attitude of our young people. It's not a simple fix. It is quite a complex matter. There's quite a bit that sits behind it, but it is an eroding of the way some, and it's far from all, it's just a small cadre or cohort of young people that think it's okay to behave this way.
Do you think the machete bins are working?
There have been a number of seizures, so I think 3,900 to date machetes are off the streets. In fact, in our work, over the last period, and I'll get you the exact dates, but we've taken in excess of 10,000 knives and machetes off the streets through our own interventions as well. So we're up over 15,000 altogether. So it's making a difference. But if you look at what happened in Broadmeadows, there are still young people out there willing to use machetes, and we need to get to them. So if we can take those machetes off them, absolutely. If not, we have to intervene in other ways.
Do you think that the people who are actually using the machetes are the ones coming to the police stations and handing them in though?
Quite possibly not, and that might account for the other 12,000 that we've seized in the line of duty, so in our actions and interactions with people. Through our searches, we've taken off, in excess of 10,000. I think it's close to 12,000.
So the bins will stay, do you think?
Well, I think they're there for a period of time. I think they've got a period of usage, but very keen to take sharp weapons intended for crime off the streets.
Overnight we saw a man actually chasing people out of his own home who'd broken in. How do you feel when you see that kind of burden on the public, people coming into their homes and them having to chase them out themselves?
Look, it's a major invasion of someone's privacy, someone's home, and a real risk to their safety. So I find it abhorrent that people, mainly young people, but not always, break into other people's homes and are quite prepared to use violence. And people will react. People will do what they do at the spur of the moment. My only advice to them is understand your own capability and look after yourself and your family. But people are still going to do what they do. I spoke to Mick Malthouse a few weeks ago. He did exactly that. He deterred them and off they went. But, you know, be careful. Think about yourself and the consequences. But, you know, if people do chase offenders off and they leave and then we catch them, which we did with those two, they are now apprehended. So be it, but just be careful.
Are you happy to be running Victoria Police?
I'm more than happy to be running Victoria Police, and I'll tell you why. They're an organisation of great people who come to work every day to keep their communities safe. The capability and the commitment of our people is fantastic, and that's what gets me up every day and gets me coming to work. But also the challenges are also what I enjoy. So the challenges of being better and being more successful in reducing crime, preventing crime, are another thing that brings me to work every day.
Were you surprised that this restructure sort of took a lot of time?
No, because they do. You just can't come into an organisation and think you know how it works and what the challenges and opportunities are. So I've spent the last 3 and a bit months really understanding the organisation, getting out and about, visiting stations, talking to officers, talking to the specialists and talking to the front line. And their messages are universal. That the front line need more support and the specialists appreciate the support and resource that they have.
And are you here for the long haul?
That's my intent.
Does this announcement recognise that we don't have enough police on the front lines for crime?
We don't have enough police on the front line to prevent and respond to calls for service, because the way we've organised ourselves has kept a lot of them either in the back room or back at the station completing jobs that someone else should do on their behalf. So it's really around the way we've organised ourselves, and that's why we have to reorganise ourselves. Build the support for the front line so they can get out there.
Chief Commissioner, will that include jobs like family violence incidents where members are out there for quite a while doing paperwork, or not so much that?
Yeah, there's not a policy or practice that isn't up for a review. You know, our family violence, family harm is a major issue in Victoria, but in every community and country that I know. And we're always improving the way we approach that. But I am very conscious of the fact that our staff spend a lot of time on each incident. So through technology and the streamlining of systems and processes and building a back end, a further back end, we already have a good back end, but improving those systems and processes I think will make a significant difference. But how do we keep those victims safe or intervene where we should as early as possible? How do we intervene with those offenders too to change the way they behave? Because if we don't change them, we'll just keep getting what we got. And how do we look after the young people that are present during those incidents? That impacts on them for life. So to make sure we're doing all that properly. But I definitely think we can streamline the way our frontline staff have to deal with that, so they're not occupied for 4 to 6 hours every time they turn up at an incident.
The decision to restructure, has that been purely designed for Victoria Police, or have you taken some inspiration from your work with New Zealand Police or from any other jurisdiction?
It's firmly focused on Victoria Police, but obviously I've taken my learnings over the year. New Zealand Police wasn't the only place I was involved in reorganising. I've done other agencies in New Zealand, and I spent some time last year helping reorganise the Fiji Police. So I've taken all those learnings into this, but this is all about Victoria Police.
Do you think you could fix it?
Absolutely. I tell you, I wouldn't be standing here unless I thought with the current capability we could deliver a much more effective service to reduce crime and harm and increase public trust and confidence.
What kind of financial costs will be involved in this restructure? How much is it going to cost?
Well, we're definitely looking in-house. So in terms of it's around redeployment. There is a reprioritisation too about where our technology spend sits. So we'll reprioritise a lot of those initiatives because our frontline have got to be enabled. They've got to be mobile. My vision for the frontline in terms of technology is all of our frontline staff can do all of their job wherever they need to be, which is pretty much on the streets and in the community.
When
can we
admin
expect to-
teams, how exactly will they work, and including the former police officers too?
Yeah, so we'll set up what we call investigation support units, file briefing units, etc. They'll operate like a hub and spoke situation, so they'll be out there in the police stations, some will be centralised. But the bottom line in terms of investigation support units is they'll sit down, there'll be ex-investigators or people wanting to be investigators who will actually investigate those matters on behalf of the front line. And file briefing units will be ex-officers who are very familiar with that practice or understand how that is done. So they'll be sitting back in back rooms, we have plenty of them, to actually relieve the front line of that staff. Our challenge is to resource that up.
Do former police officers want to do that?
I was at the retired members function last Friday night, and without being asked, many of them who are experienced beyond belief, who could do a lot of this work with their eyes closed, were coming up to me and saying, we want to come back and work for you. Hey, I'll do a couple of days here, I'll do a few days there. I want to bring those people back. People who retire from the police really do deserve a rest. But you'll find if you talk to them, they want to stay connected to the organisation because it's a real family. They love the police and they want to continue to contribute. So that's a long answer to your question. Short answer is yes.
The average frontline police officer, how much time a week or a day would they spend on paperwork?
It does vary, but way too much. So we talk about some of the experiences we talk about. If I ask a frontline staff member how often they need to be back at the station if they make an arrest or they're completing a family violence report, it can be 4 to 6 hours. It can be almost their entire shift. And all of you want to see those police officers out there on the street. So if we can use technology and streamline systems to do that, we will. That's the plan.
Is this proposal, is it just a proposal or is it going to happen from today, or when can we expect to see it?
It starts as a proposal around how we look, how we organise ourselves, what the structure looks like. It has to happen that way. At the same time, I have what's called an uplift program, which is 5 work streams, which I don't want to bore you with the terminology, but one is how we organise ourselves, one is technology, one is around leadership, one is around recruitment, retention and return. One is, if I didn't mention technology, then it's technology. And the other is, how do we build that back of house? What do systems and processes look like? So this is going to be a few years in the making, of course, but we intend to start with pilots as soon as possible. So that uplift program is pretty much underway now.
When was the last time Victoria Police had a restructuring like this? Do you know?
I think they've had moderate reconstructions over the years, but I'm told it's been over 10 years since they had their last significant restructure.
Chief Commissioner, anything else from you?
Oh, lots probably, but I appreciate your questions and your presence. It's really important that we get these messages out to the public and they understand what our intent is, what our plans are, and how we intend to approach this.
Chief Commissioner, sorry, one more. The ABC reported last week that Victoria Police are auditing an officer's work in Bendigo from June 2016 to August 2025. It was a forensics case, and Victoria Police confirmed 77 active court cases may be impacted. Do you know how many past cases are estimated to be affected if this goes broader across the state?
I don't have the exact numbers, but I can tell you that it's a real focus for our team to get underneath that matter and understand what the risks are. And as more information comes to hand, we'll be more than happy to share it if we can, depending on the platform or the environment. But yeah, it's a concern for us and it is a focus for us.
I have one more question, Chief Commissioner, I hope that's okay.
Sure.
How do you hope to roll out these initiatives, given there's been so many hours, I think more than 25,000 hours spent with protests, police being pulled off their general duties, having to patrol protests or be at protests over the past 2 years?
Yeah, I think since October of 23, we've dedicated in excess of 25,000 police shifts, not police hours, but police shifts to managing protests. And we at Victoria Police absolutely get the protesters' intent to protest and their causes that they have, but I do appeal to them to think differently about how they do it. They have empathy and compassion for whatever their cause may be, not for us to judge. But what I ask is that they also have empathy and compassion for the people of Melbourne. If I took half of those 25,000 shifts and dedicated them to prevention, we'd have less crime. If streets, and there were 2 protests at least over the weekend where entire blocks were blocked off, it affects perceptions of safety, it affects business, and affects the way other Melburnians go about their business. So I appeal to the protest community to think differently and perhaps also have compassion and empathy for the people of Melbourne and Victoria and how they go about it. I'm sure they will continue to go about it, but please think of your fellow citizens as to how you approach that. And if I could take even half of those 25,000 shifts and devote them to other frontline policing duties, again, we'd make a difference.
And of course, I think we are all wondering as well, is there any update on the search for Desi Freeman?
Unfortunately, we have no updates of the 3 likely scenarios. We're considering what weight we put to each of them. Is he still alive? We don't know. Is he alive and still in the area? We have no real information to suggest that's occurred, but we never discount. Or has he been enabled to leave the area and is being looked after by others? We don't know. All of those are assumptions, possibilities, and we plan and resource to those 3.
Are you still getting help from interstate police from New South Wales and WA, etc.?
Yes, we are, and our intention in the future is to make sure that we maintain an intelligence resource up there, an investigative resource, a reassurance resource, and a highly capable search resource. And what I've asked my fellow commissioners for, well actually they've volunteered, I don't need to ask, is that they will complement those resources. So we'll kind of rotate the states and territories, as well as New Zealand, who continue to offer their assistance, so that we've got a presence up there so we can continue to follow up lines of inquiry, continue to follow search areas we need to do, keep the community feeling safe.
How many officers are still there at the moment?
It does go up and down. We increased the resource there well over 200 at the end of last week. We're probably down to another 200 this week. It will fluctuate depending on the need.
How many tip-offs, have you received since the reward was announced?
At my last update, there was in excess of 1,400. Every one of those has been pursued twice. So we've looked at them and then we've re-examined them. But we encourage anyone who believes they have any information that could help us find this person, please don't hesitate to let us know.
Has anyone come forward for the $1 million reward?
Well, the $1 million reward is based on an arrest, and there have been no arrests.
Makes sense.
Oh, well.
Not at us.
So if there's nothing more, I do thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.